Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziol.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. I'm really excited because I had another terrific guest, Caitlin Drago. She's from Inspire Improv and Coaching, Inc., and she is an amazing person that I got to meet a few months back and knew that I just immediately had to have her on the show. So welcome to the show, Caitlin.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Yeah. So why don't we just start out with a quick, bio on who you are and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am a certified leadership coach, facilitator, trainer, speaker with a background in acting and improv, which I know is unconventional. I went to school for thanks. I went to school for improv. Then I moved to LA, continued studying and working there. And then when, I wasn't getting as far in the entertainment industry as I had hoped, I decided that it was time to move on. So we moved back to the Rochester area where a lot of our family is. And I knew coming back that there were companies in New York and Chicago and LA who used improv for professional development and team building. And at the time, there didn't seem to be a lot of that in the Rochester area. Mm-hmm. So I started toying around with that. And, fast forward a few years, I started my own company. And I've been doing that for about 8 years now, using improv as a platform for interactive learning, helping companies with communication and collaboration and teamwork.
That's awesome. It's awesome. And I'm no stranger to improv myself. I did not have a career where I went out into LA at all. But I did do that a little bit in college and before, and now I'm kind of coming back in, working. We had Nuts and Bolts on nice. The show in the past, and that's kind of where I'll, go to comedy at the Carlson. We have another show coming up actually later, either in the late fall or early winter.
Oh, I hope you post about it.
Oh, I definitely will. I'll let you know. We'll need people, we'll pull you right up on stage, So, and you know how that is. It's all audio, audience interactive and everything. But, I guess the other claim to fame that I have, is when I was, dating someone back in high school. She was an actress and a model, and she was always going all these tryouts, and she would make me come along and stuff. And then one time she made me try out, and I actually got a part as an extra in the movie Celebrity, directed by Woody Allen, had Leonardo DiCaprio and Winona Ryder. And I was a shoulder in one scene, and then a blur in front of the camera that probably got cut because I could never find it.
Hey, you know what?
But I made it.
Those are both important pieces.
Very important.
To bring it right into improv right away.
Right.
There's this idea that sometimes we go into it wanting to be like, oh, I want to be in a scene where I can say, hey, there's me. Didn't I do a cool thing? When, maybe it's a shoulder or maybe it is a blur that is necessary in that frame to make the whole thing work visually. So even though, it's what does the team need at this moment?
Exactly. Is
it a shoulder or is it a starring role?
Right. Well, if anyone needs a shoulder, I'm there. But that usually is one of those two truths and a lie thing, or like something interesting about me. So that's usually what I throw in there. But back to you, the show is not about me. I had to bring that in because it's just like, oh wow, I have some experience. My shoulder's been in many a background scene.
Okay.
But let's talk a little bit more about, I know you have a book coming out as well, or came out. And I know we want to discuss that too, but let's talk a little bit just more about how you built up to that. You gave us a great synopsis of 7 years of coaching, and what gave you like this real like inspiration to take something like improv and put it towards, helping organizations and people, become more confident and better in what they do?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Uh,
All the hard questions
so,
here. That sounds
right,
terrific.
right. So it's it's not I wasn't the first person, like I said, to
Sure.
use improv for professional development. And the way that I started working with it actually was I was playing with it a little bit at a consulting firm that I had been hired initially to be an executive assistant at, but said, "Hey, I've got this. If you want to throw me in, I'm
I'm
here."
ready. I'm ready,
So
coach.
exactly. So I was playing a little bit there, and I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the idea of being able to connect with other people in that way. I really like the idea of, like when I walk in a room and someone says, "Oh, well, I could never do improv," I'm kind of like, "Oh, but yes, you can." And
Yeah.
that I get a lot of joy from just showing people their own creativity and showing them that they can do something that maybe they didn't think they could do.
Mhm.
But the moment that sticks out the most was outside of work, I was also doing some volunteer work. I wanted to be able to hone this further, and I wanted to see what the other applications were for it. And we had just moved back and I wanted to get connected to my community.
Mhm.
And I knew this was something unique that I had to offer. And so I started volunteering with mostly organizations that serve women, not for profits, and going in and doing workshops with them to help them to, regain their voice and their connection to their own creativity and their own strength and resilience. And I showed up for one, and we weren't sure how many people were going to be there, and there were three. And so if you've ever tried to do like a class or anything like that, I was like, all right, okay, yep, we can do this with three people. I can figure this out on the fly. And there was a point where one of the women said, "I haven't laughed like this in so long."
Mhm.
And it was that moment that was that clear. This is what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Very
So
cool.
that's the long-winded answer to
Well, it was a long-winded question, so I, expected something in return. Not like yes. So,
that.
but yeah, that's awesome. And they say laughter is the best medicine,
Mhm.
right? And I think that that's totally true. And you want to infuse your workspace and your environment with laughter because it does help like alleviate stressful situations and all those different things. So, can you talk a little bit about like your approach when you do have a client, and like what are you trying? How are you trying to help them? How are you trying to help them to see that improv is the right way to kind of, make things better?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily the right way for everyone. It's a way.
No,
And
it's the
what
right way. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes,
Okay,
let's
it's
stick
a
to that.
way. We'll go to
It's
that.
a way. And so people bring me in a couple of different ways. Sometimes they know that something's going on with the culture, and they know that things have to change and they're not quite sure how. And so we'll do an assessment of some sort, gather that information. Other times maybe they've already done a survey or something or received some feedback and can point to some specific things. And this is everything doesn't apply to every single situation. However, in my professional experience, and maybe it's just the people who are attracted to me or who drawn to me, it tends to boil down to communication and connection. And that is what improv is doing. It's forcing us to be in a position where we have to listen to each other, where nobody is in charge, no one can be in charge in an improv scene, and where we have to slow down, listen, and say yes to what the other person is saying versus, thinking about what we're going to say and not really being present, or not even really listening to the whole thing before we jump in and with our idea or saying no. To answer your question, how does that work? I was just having a conversation about self-awareness and how we create those environments where that can happen, because that's what this is about. And it starts with creating that space where we have really set expectations for what's going to happen. It's not just, okay, we're all going to do improv and be silly and make everyone feel uncomfortable just for the sake of being uncomfortable and watching you squirm. That's not fair. It's, this is what improv is. This is what improv isn't. This is what we're looking to gain through our experience here. And I learned I learned this at a conference, where now I always give people the heads up that I'm not going to ask anyone to perform either. Usually we do exercises simultaneously in small groups or pairs, unless I need a volunteer for something. And in that case, they can volunteer themselves, but I'm not going to call on anyone and put them up in front of a group and say, and go. That's not fair.
Yes.
I mean, some people would love that. Most people don't. But I was at a conference once where I was doing I was on the schedule to do an icebreaker. And as I was meeting people throughout the day, we would be chatting, having a nice conversation. And then they would ask, my name and what brought me there. And I would tell them, like, oh, you're the improv person. Please don't call on me. Please don't call on me. And so that was the first time. The first thing I did when I got up on the stage was, I'm not going to call on anyone who doesn't want to be brought up here. No, don't worry about it. There's not going to be. So all of that to say, I try to make it as safe of a space as possible so that people can step outside of their comfort zone. And then I get people laughing, even if it's just through telling my own, background and, some self-deprecating humor there, or just doing like a really simple exercise that because of it is going to get people laughing. It's helping to lower that stress level, lowering those barriers to learning and getting people in that mindset and that brain space where they can take in new information. Like you said, laughter is the best. There's so many applications, there's so many great things about laughter and how it can help us with our own ability to learn and to try new things and to take in information and to bond with others.
Yeah, I mean, and being able to laugh at yourself, being able to laugh at the moment, it's important, and having the freedom to do that in a space. Because going back to something you said earlier, I mean, communication in any situation really, but it's particularly in businesses and organizations, is paramount. Like, how many times has one simple like misunderstanding, like ruin someone's day, or ruin something because like someone misinterpreted what people were saying because they weren't actively listening, which is a very important part, of improv, and something that honestly, as a quite a talker myself, I struggle with, you know, and that's probably the biggest challenge for me when I am doing improv or really anything is shutting up. So, um, so what are some things that, can you give us an example maybe of, a typical exercise that you would try to use, or warm up, or an icebreaker that would be fun?
Absolutely. So, and this is something that, listeners can take and do with their team, with their family, with their friends. And it's really simple. It's one word story. And like you were saying, you notice the challenge of, I just need to shut up so I can hear what's happening here.
Yeah.
And basically it's pretty self-explanatory. You're telling a story, going around a group, giving one word at a time in order. And it's not a memory game. You don't have to repeat back what everyone said right before you. And I love using that because it is so simple. You're not asking too much of people right off the bat. It's just one word. Just got to give us one word. And we set it up by sharing the two principles of improv that we're really going to be focusing on. The first being that we always say yes and. And so that sounds very simple. And there's a lot of waves that it can make. Because saying yes and requires, again, that we do listen. We can't say yes to something we didn't hear. And it requires us to look for what we can agree with versus what we don't agree with. And it forces us to be in that moment and to add on to what is happening in that second versus trying to push our own idea through. And then the other big rule is that we're always looking to make each other look good. So, like we did with the shoulder, it's about setting each other up for success. It's not about thinking about what's the funny thing that I'm going to say, what's the hilarious word I'm going to throw out there. Everyone's going to think I'm the most brilliant improviser here. It's looking for what is necessary and needed in that moment to set our teammates up for success. So if you had been on camera and decided, I don't want to be the shoulder right now, I'm going to turn around and, give some jazz hands, it would have ruined the whole thing. Your job in that moment was to make this other scene that was happening look good. And that was the contribution to it. And so with setting that up, it's again encouraging people to be more in the moment and try not to think ahead too much. It's also giving them that safety net of, I might be really flustered and throw out a word that I'm not even sure about. And I know that the person after me is going to catch me and make sure that that word works within the context of the story that we're telling. And what tends to happen is people notice for themselves their own natural tendencies when it comes to how they communicate, whether it is, oh, the whole time I was trying to think about what I was going to say, and then it got to me and I wasn't ready. Or as soon as we come up with the title of the story, they already have the entire thing figured out. Or just or being frustrated that the story didn't go the way they wanted it to go. It's just a nice way to make that inroad of maybe there are some disconnects in how we communicate. None of us are perfect. And so where are the opportunity areas here? And it's a way to do that in a light way. Again, like you said, we can laugh at ourselves. And when we are laughing, we're more likely to be open to hearing that and having that further self-awareness. I could never go into a company and say, hey, I hear none of you are listening to each other. That's not going to help anything. I'm not really building trust in that moment. And so that's one of the reasons why I really love using improv as a tool, because it is that great equalizer. There are principles baked into it that allow us to be better communicators and better connectors. And it's done in a way that allows us to have those optimal learning experiences.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the funniest moments or the best moments on those one story kind of things is when or one word stories is when you're not like thinking about the next phrase or thinking about what you're gonna say, because that's when something natural kind of blurts out, and it can be the funniest thing ever, you know. So but I think, you know, it's so part of like improv and some, you want to get the company or the people to the hive mind state where they're all kind of thinking seamlessly and like or more interactive, or what's the word I'm looking for, more of a cohesive collaborative cohesive unit, right? So do you kind of interpret put that into your methods too, or does that sort of naturally happen? Is there a good story you have where something like that like just clicked?
Well, I think about what it makes me think of is when we take the improv principles and then layer on some other like communication skills onto it. I think about when we are talking about having difficult conversations and how it's so important to decide what it is that we're shooting for, and being able to zoom out when you have two people who might be in this conflicting conversation where it's like, okay, but what do you both need to get out of this?
Hmm.
And it's again kind of looking for what is right, what can we agree on, and how can we work together collaboratively towards that higher goal versus, me versus you.
Hmm. No, that's a great point. Um, it's super important because like those are also the situations that build up that angst and that anxiety and the friction between two or more people. So cool, great point. Um, well, we can shift gears, I think, because I know, like I said earlier in the show, you do have a book coming out, which you were so generously gave me an advanced, preview to, and so approaching improv, communication, and connection in business and beyond. Where did this sort of idea spark? Is it something that you always kind of had on your mind? I want to be a published author as well. Or, how did this kind of come to be?
So I had, writing a book was something that was in one of those like, oh, someday I would like to.
Yep.
And it was something I had wanted to do for a while. And there was something that was kind of getting in the way. And I was having a conversation with a friend who had written a couple of books. And I said, the thing that's getting in the way here is, and he said, that everything's already been written and nothing that you say will be truly unique or new. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what it is. Because I felt that if I was going to write something, it had to be, mind blowing and nothing that had ever been written before. And he said, well, you're right. Everything has been written,
Mm.
but it's going to be from your perspective. It's going to be in your voice for the people who are drawn to you. And that's okay. And so with, taking that pressure of this has to be 100% new information off of my shoulders,
Mhm.
I was able to start writing. And it's been a really enjoyable process, really, to take what I've learned as a, trainer and coach and facilitator over the past several years and put that into a book where other people who, I might not be able to work with directly can
Mhm.
take this and go forward and put it into practice and gain from it as a resource.
Very cool. Yeah, I have also always wanted to write, and I started off, writing or ended my college career with an English degree. And it's just same thing. But more often than like I start a lot of books, I start a lot of things, and then I'm like, I'm done. Like, oh, or I'll read your book and I've read, part of it, and I'll be like, darn it, I could have written this. So there's been a couple of those moments, or like I had an idea once to write like a novel, and and then I read something and I'm like, that was my idea. Why didn't I just do that, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's, first of all, terrific that you did it, right? You went that and in going through that whole process, speaking to a lot of friends that have written and stuff. I know it is not easy to kind of do and complete, right? So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And I think, based upon what I've read so far, it's a great, approach, and um tells a little bit about like where you've come from, which I love. And I love this one like excerpt where I was like, now you wrote, now I think I'm hilarious, dot dot dot. My son might tell you differently, but it isn't its ability to be funny that makes them good at improv. It's their ability to listen. So that was something that you, really started off with in the show here, and I think that is so important. To be present with one's team, to be curious, and to build and create with what has been put in front of them. Um, so I think that like I said, you gave me like the beginning of the book, and I can't wait to read the whole thing because it's just there's so many nuggets of awesome little like knowledge points and suggestions from your perspective that are important for our listeners to hear and others to hear, to help improve themselves and help their working relationships. So I so congratulations on
Thank
writing the book,
you.
and thank you for writing the book, because I think you're going to affect more people than you realize.
That's really
So,
nice to hear. Thank you, Nick.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
what's so to your point, again, like the idea that, oh, I can't do improv. I always like to share with people, one, what you said, that it's not about being funny. It's
Mhm.
about your ability to listen and be present with other people. And it's also something that everyone is doing all day, every day.
Yep.
So it's not
Yeah.
a completely new skill that anyone's learning. I always say, we're sharpening a tool that you
Yeah.
already have. And within the book, what I've tried to do is both share that basic platform of what is improv, what does this yes and
Mhm.
principle mean, what is this making each other look good principle mean.
Mhm.
Let's mash those together. I'm going to call that the improv approach for the sake of
Sure.
simplicity. And then I take that and I go through some other communication skills that people already have, like having difficult conversations and giving and receiving feedback. And I look at how you can layer on that improv approach to those specific kinds of conversations to make them even more effective. And
Mhm.
then in the very last section of the book, we talk a little bit more about the cultural implications of this and how that looks. And then just, some encouragement for those who want to put this into practice
Yeah.
and what that might look like.
Now, this might be a hard question, but it
Mhm.
just kind of popped in my head as you were speaking. So, here I am thinking about the next question and
Have
not
at it.
following the process, right?
That's all right.
Um, but I know this book would be good pretty much for anybody, right? But is there an intentional audience that you feel really could benefit? Like, is there a background of a type of person or group that really needs to read this right now?
Yeah, so I wrote it with, because you can't, if you try to write a book with everyone in mind,
Yes.
you're never going to finish it. Who I had in mind was leaders who are looking for a way to improve their own communication and connection with their teams, and also gain some tools for how to share this with their team as well. So,
Mhm.
yes, I want to model this behavior. I want to do this myself. And how can I also encourage my team to do that too? And hopefully, this can be a tool for them. And like I said, in the beginning, people aren't usually super excited about the idea of doing improv, and it can be really intimidating.
Mhm.
And when I was working with my editor, figuring out the title was the last thing that we did.
Mhm.
And we, played with some ideas, and he said, "You know what? I was going on a walk and I thought, we talked about the improv approach. What if we just flip that to approaching improv?"
Mhm.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
That encompasses it, because I really pride myself on making improv something that is approachable
Mhm.
and taking some of that intimidation away and making it something that that really anyone can put into practice and learn from.
Yeah. And if you can do improv, which anyone can, and like we had a previous conversation where we spoke about how everyone's doing improv anyway. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you're not realizing that you're doing it. Like, you don't have a set idea of what everyone's going to say and what's going to happen throughout a day, so you were reacting to different things. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a process to by which react and react better and keep lines of communications open, and understanding, so that you can better, you know react or get through your day positively
Uh-huh.
with good communications. Totally love it. So, like, when people are getting ready to work with you, are there things that you kind of send ahead of time to kind of prepare them for the experience, right? So
Yes.
that they're not so shocked and not so scared, because so what are those, and how do you do that?
Exactly. And so it clearly didn't put this in the preview, but
Right.
there is a part of the book where I mentioned that question of, so is there something that we could send to our participants ahead of time to tell them what's going on here? I now have a template for that because it
Cool.
gets asked so often. And really it's letting them know, yes, we're doing improv. This is what improv is. This is what improv isn't. And I'm not going to ask anyone to perform. It's
Mhm.
usually that simple. And also sharing too that you're all improvising. This
Yeah.
is not something that's entirely new. So that's at least hoping to, set the stage so that they can come in with a little less fear and trepidation than they may have come in with otherwise.
And as far as the book writing process goes, I mean, there's definitely a lot that goes into that. You're, probably researching and discovering and rewriting over and over again. Was there anything that happened during the writing of this book that you were surprised about, that made it into the book that you just weren't expecting?
That's a good question. I think that had I tried to write this book 4 years ago, I would not have allowed myself to include as many personal family stories
Hmm.
as I did. I would have put pressure on myself that every single example, every anecdote has to be from work.
Hmm.
It has to, and I think what COVID did is it showed everyone that we can, even though we might not want to all the time, but we are the people who we are at work, and we are also the people who we are outside of work. And as someone who, spent the last couple of years, uh, as we all did, a lot more with our family integrated
Hmm.
into work, a lot of those examples felt like I was allowed to share them
Hmm.
and that they would be helpful and resonate with other people. It didn't just have to be, this is my work persona and this is the only place that these stories can come from.
Yeah. I think allowing people to see into that lens, even like before the pandemic and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I know of a lot of people that are like, this is my work personality and this is how I behave at work. And then all of a sudden they're like the funniest. Like, there are people that I worked with at Madai College. There's
Uh-huh.
one person in particular um, that I never knew until like tail end of the experience. She was a comedian. I would never have expected it ever. Because like, she was funny, but like she was not, I did not see her going on a stage. But had I known that, there was this other connection that I could have had, right?
Mm.
And getting to know your in this case, you as a writer, and you are giving probably some family stories too that maybe some people aren't super happy about in the family sharing. Uh, that's my biggest fear, is being a podcaster. I'm going to talk about my kids or something, and they're going to hate me for it. But I think it opens up a door to see you as a person too, and for people to like connect better with you as a writer, or if you're doing it at work, you as a person, and that there's other connections that could happen because of that. So I
Yeah.
think it's terrific that you did that, and it's so awesome. It did come across in the preface, right? So like, of what I was reading, like that this is going to be it's a fun read. So obviously we're going to put all the links in the show notes that so people can get your book. But why don't you tell us really quickly, for those that are listening on the road or something that don't have access to a pen, what's the best way to get your book?
Sure. So the book is, if you just go to Amazon and search Approaching Improv, and I think at this point you still might have to put Caitlin Drago in there,
Okay.
or you can go to my website, inspireimprov.com. There's a book tab, or if you want to go directly to it, it's inspireimprov.com/approaching dash improv.
Very, very cool. Well, I can't wait to get the full copy, and I hope that my listeners will do the same. It is a fun read. It is, I can't wait. So, but let's talk a little bit more, about what you're doing next. I mean, you're, an accomplished published writer now. So where's the next step?
Celebrating that the book is out. No, this time of year it's towards the end of the year, so a lot of people are doing their end of year retreats and things like that. And so often folks will bring me in to kind of kick off the
Yeah.
retreat, because a lot of times they're having they're doing their year planning, they're doing their strategic planning. And so what I like is being able to go in and set the stage for, this is how we're going to communicate with each other as we're having these bigger conversations. We are going to look for what can work versus what can't work. We're going to be present. We're going to listen. We're going to try to make these collaborative conversations. So you're really setting them up to really kind of supercharge those other conversations and giving them some structure within which to do that. To bring it back to just, you were talking about the book writing process too. And to sit in front of a blank piece of paper is very intimidating. And what made it possible for me was I had, I bought a book about writing books.
Writing a book.
And it gave me a structure of, this is how to, do the brain dump. This is how to make your outline. And within improv, it can be really intimidating from the outside of like, oh, this is just a free for all. And I just have to like come up with something. But what I love about improv is that there is a specific set of rules and principles that put those guardrails around what you need to do so that there is some direction within that freedom.
Yeah.
And so as people go into, say I work with them in the morning and they go into the afternoon, they've got kind of this touchstone of yes and that they can lean back on and kind of pick on each other a little bit in a kind way if they hear each other saying yes but, or if they notice that they're squashing someone's idea. It's something to touch back on that can be really solid and structured in a way for them.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can be a misconception that there's no structure to improv, right? And I think that, the writing process and I should get a book that tells me how to write because maybe that'll help me, right? Good suggestion. But I think that that's good, right? To kind of follow
it's
the
this one.
Yeah.
It's this one.
All right. Cool.
Published.
Well, another
just called published.
Simple yet effective. Awesome. But yeah, I think that that's important to realize that there is a structure, there are rules to really what you're doing as far as improv goes. So but the book writing and all of those different things like lead you it probably some winding roads, right? Like, so what I'll ask another book related question in regards to that because it just popped in my head. What was there anything that you just like you wanted to include but you just didn't include in the book that maybe is going to be the next book?
I don't think so. There was a point where I was writing and I felt like I was starting to run out of steam.
Yeah.
And I had an accountability partner who, we would go back and forth and share each day what our word count was.
Sure.
And I was like, I feel like I'm just squeezing and nothing's coming out. And he made the point of, this is your first book.
Yeah.
You don't have to try to put everything into this. And then to your point of, what could be in the next book, as my editor was going through, there were certain places where, and, this is the benefit of having someone who's outside of your own brain look at your work. There were points where he would make a comment of, oh, this could be an interesting second book, or, this could be something that could be interesting to expand on in a different way. So, there are some things that are percolating, but I'm not going to dive into it anytime soon.
Yeah. So, all right. So we talked a little bit about the future and kind of what's next. There's possibly a second book coming in, which is great. So what else is next for you and your business? Like, what other things are you looking forward to?
Especially as things are opening up more, they've been opening, but
truly opening. Yep.
Truly opening. One of the other pieces of having the book was that it tends to be easier to get into like speaking opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been doing a lot of. And I'm looking forward to more of those opportunities and more of those doors being opened now that I have that additional resource. So, hopefully maybe getting ready to travel to some different conferences, do some things like that.
Awesome.
I know as we're recording this, it's late October, and November 1st is when South by Southwest announces their selections.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it through to the second portion of their selection process. So now it's in the third process, which we'll find out about on November 1st, whether or not I'm in that. We'll see, fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
definitely.
But it would be really nice to be able to go down and do that. That would
That
be
would be
really
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I hope that happens for you. I'll cross
Me
my
too.
fingers as well. And
Thanks.
I thought you were going to go like, it's getting close to November 1st, Rochester, New York. I'd love to go to a conference in Hawaii and speak.
Oh.
That's where I thought you were going. But that also is
Oh,
usually the one spot.
I would love to get on the circuit of like corporate retreats that
Sure.
go to tropical places.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
would be lovely.
Yes, Italy and France in the summer would be
Mhm.
nice, right.
Mhm.
Well, look, hopefully my listeners will bring you to their retreats
Absolutely.
all over the world and not in the tundra. That is Rochester sometimes, right?
Mhm.
So do you totally different question base, but do you still act or do improv at all?
When we moved back to the Rochester area, I did. I was with Unleashed Improv for a while, and then did some work with the Jiva Comedy Improv for a couple of years, and also had an agent over in Syracuse. So I did some local commercials and things like that. And then I, had my son and then started my own business. And
Yeah.
so,
And you're
you know,
improving all the time anyway, so
exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the thing, this is still what I love about facilitation and training is that it really is a different form of performance. It's that direct transfer of skills of I need to be present with my clients. I need to be in acting, we call it acting, not reacting. Or no,
right.
sorry. You're not acting, you're reacting.
Hmm.
So you're present, you're in the moment, and you're responding to what your partner is putting out there. And that's what I'm doing in those spaces as
Hmm.
well. And what I love about it too is that you don't have to have the answers. You don't have to
Right.
be right. I'm not being brought in to be an expert on the job that this person has. I'm being brought in to be that facilitator,
Right.
facilitating these conversations as that outside party. And someday I would love to get back into, performing and getting on
Being a
stage and
shoulder.
doing some of that, being a shoulder, maybe if I get really lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, but in the meantime, there is what I love about performing, I'm still getting to do.
Mhm.
It's that that study of human nature and that connectedness with other people. I'm still getting that from what I'm doing. It's just not on a stage all the time.
Well, and that's what makes your job probably a lot of fun for you and very satisfying is that you're doing or getting to do what you love to do. And that is something that's super important. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that you get to do that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to definitely share? Um, and while you're thinking about that,
Mm-hmm.
you also made me think of yesterday where my family, my daughters had never seen Modern Family before, and we are rewatching the whole, thing. And and during yesterday's episode, it was Phil and Gloria happened to be going into a coffee shop where they were shooting a commercial and they get to go into the background of the commercial and they have to pantomime in the background while the actors are doing things. So uh it was hilarious because of all the different things that they both were doing, super exaggerations in the background of things. And then at one point Gloria like pretends to answer her cell phone but doesn't use her cell phone, she uses her fingers to answer in the background, and the director's like, "What are you doing?" She's answering a pretend cell phone. So, but I think about like that would be probably my experience at this point. Like, I'm gonna pantomime in the background, but be so crazy that they're gonna kick me out of the whole scene.
Oh, there was a commercial that I did once. It was actually filmed on a street in Rochester. And it ended up being a national commercial, but they filmed it here. And I was walking down the sidewalk with a purse on and holding a phone, and it was for this like app.
Uh-huh.
And you imagine walking down a sidewalk holding a phone with a purse on for 6 hours.
Uh-huh.
And it got to a point where the director said to me, Caitlin, I need you to walk more like a human. Something long enough that things start to get wonky.
Yeah.
And then you get feedback that you're not walking like a human anymore.
Yes, you're walking like a robot. I don't know how you're walking.
But something
yeah,
has to
that's
change
great.
here.
Something's got to change. Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
could talk about these things forever with you for
Oh
sure.
my gosh.
But is there anything else, like going back to that question that's sometimes a
Yeah.
stumper? Like, is there anything else you want to share with the audience that you didn't get to share before I took you on a tangent?
I don't I think I would just want to share maybe one thing that they can do today to try this out.
Yeah.
And that would be to just find something that you can say yes to. And even if you're just training your brain to focus on that, whether you say yes or not, hopefully it will take you down a couple of different paths throughout your day
Mm,
by making that choice to look for what is it that I can agree to or that I can listen to more intently today. Saying yes doesn't always have to be yes, I agree. It can be yes, I'm here. Yes, I am present.
very, very good. Can't think of a better way to end this episode. Thank you, Caitlin, for being on That
Mhm.
Sounds Terrific. I'm your host, Nick Koziol. I urge my audience to check out Approaching Improv and definitely talk to Caitlin. All of the links will be in our show notes. You definitely want to bring her in, or at least chat with her. You'll have a fun conversation and you'll learn something too. So thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific 2 and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.